Hi guys, it's April, and I have a book review for you. Like I do all of my other book reviews, I'm going to have the non-spoilery section up front, followed by a lot of spoils or other random thoughts that just go through my mind as I was reading this book. I will let you know when that transition happens. And guys, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do this review yet. This one's a special one. I received a copy of The Oyster Thief by Sonia Faruqi for a free and honest review, and that is exactly what this is going to be. I am going to give it all to you, no holds barred. Trust me, just because I got this book for free does not mean I am going to be holding myself back, because I don't know how to do that, like at all. The story of The Oyster Thief is the story of Coraline, who's a mermaid who is studying to become a master healer, when one day her brother becomes deathly ill because of an oil spill. She is now on a mission to find this magical elixir, and so starts her journey into the deep. On the other side, you have Izar, who is a human whose main goal in life is to create underwater fire. He has grown up with a deep hatred of mermaids because of what they have done to his parents, and so he wants to create this fire so he can just mine the surface of the ocean. And of course, these two beings are gonna collide when Izar is turned into a merman, and things just happen, because otherwise this would not be a very exciting story. The premise of the story is extremely fascinating. I love all the science and a little bit of ocean history and the idea of creating fire that burns underwater and all the science that has to go on behind that. There are a lot of things that are very interesting in the story, especially the mythology and the magic behind everything. And I do like how you can tell that the author did her research when she talks about sea algae and when she talks about creating underwater fire. I did struggle a bit with the writing. It was very choppy and a little hard to get into. It felt like it was struggling on the line of being middle grade and YA. There were times when I got trapped in reading the story and reading about the mer people and wondering why they so closely resembled humans when their society and their culture would be totally different, and where names and just classification of things would be different. And I know she talks about it in the afterwards that she chose to stick with English for the storytelling reasons, but I felt like a lot of the nomenclatures that went on in the story felt very, very juvenile. There were things like the wrongdoer's refractory and the humor, which is a mix between a human and a mermaid, that just felt very, very juvenile and would make sense for something inside of a middle grade novel where you can still sit on that edge of disbelief of mermaids and humans, and they could probably still be the same thing. But I think if you wanted to reach more of a young adult or a adult audience, it had to have more structure than that. I really wanted the mer people to have their own culture, their own society, something that made them uniquely them, so that when you had this clash between humans and mer people, it felt real. But because they so closely resembled each other, that tension and that distinction between class that was trying to happen inside the story, it never really took. And there was a lot of times where there was these really weird feeling cliffhangers where the characters would be in the middle of something and then it would jump and you didn't quite know how you got from point A to point B, but they kind of referred back to how they went from point A to point B. It felt weird and a little off-putting. I can see where that was trying to build tension, but it just completely lost me a lot of the time, and I wanted to see this full journey. I wanted to see these characters grow together, and I didn't really get that, unfortunately. The romance didn't feel real to me. It felt a little awkward and weird. There was something about the dynamic between the two main characters that didn't feel authentic, and part of it might have been because the characters themselves didn't really feel fully fleshed out, and part of that might have been because of the writing and how things were always so very, very choppy. You never really truly got invested into one character or another. And then there was the fact that Coraline, female protagonist, she had a personality that I really struggled with. There were parts in this story where I wanted to understand her, but the fact that she just kind of rolls over a lot of the time, I really disliked. Unfortunately, that was one of the main things that really tore me completely away from this story. There were a lot of things going for this book, but that alone, the fact that this character didn't seem to want to fight for herself in anything and always relied on Izar or someone else to come and wrap up the bows prettily and nicely for her. I struggled with if she had grown from that young mermaid that relied on her books and her knowledge in that direction and became something stronger, I would have really enjoyed this book. It didn't really get there. So if you like to read mermaid stories and you want something a little different and somewhat quickish to read, go ahead and read this book. I think it needs just a little bit more work and it would truly be something very, very epic. Now, this is the point. If you don't want spoilers, please leave now. But if you want to spoil yourself or you have read this book, stick around. I would love to start a conversation with you because I am totally open to being told that I am completely off my rocker because sometimes I am. As I was mentioning near the end of my non-spoiler section, I struggled with Coraline because of her inability to have a backbone. And the greatest point in this story in which it really, really irked me was when she decided she was in love with Zara, which I still don't understand to this day, and the fact that she is marrying not him, and it was prophesied that she would die. So she's like, fine, okay, I'm just gonna stop eating and die, and slowly sink into my own mind and not care about the rest of the world. Even though I had just created a new remedy to save my brother, I have achieved master status, I'm coming back to a full-time job, and I can very easily decide that, hey, I don't want to marry this dude. I want to go off and do my own thing. I'm pretty much settled for now. Yeah, I'm gonna pine after this guy who's a human and a mermaid. Humor, I just feel that term. That term just drives me nuts. But no, her solution to all of life's problems was just to roll over in bed and just let death take her. And I struggled not to chuck the book across the plane that I was currently sitting in as I was reading it. I was so stinking ticked. I hate characters like that. I do not relate. I am more of a person who's like, you see the problem? Go fix it. Don't wallow. Wallowing achieves nothing. But that was just, it wasn't, yeah. And so that, and I struggled with a lot of the characters because there wasn't a lot of dimension to them. And if they had a character flaw, it was completely blown up and that became the character. So Coraline's mother is the biggest proponent of this, where she is all about getting the husband and getting the things and just doing whatever it takes. She is the quintessential mean girl. And she's okay with you starving yourself to make yourself look amazing. And there are times where she starts to have these moments of, well, maybe I'm not the best and maybe I should, but then 2 sentences later, she is back to being that overused trope. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And the fact that the whole Mer society is thrown back so far, especially in female empowerment, there were no really good female-to-female relationships in this story whatsoever. There was none. Absolutely none. The lady she worked for was just cold and mean and very authoritative. Her mother was all about snagging the richest man in the town and doing whatever it takes, starving yourself, making yourself the most feminine version of yourself that you possibly can. And then some of the other girls in the town were all about being snooty because they wanted her man. And I struggled with that a little bit. A lot of it. And then the fact that the mer people were an exact replica of human society. I struggled to understand why they would want a rug or why they'd want 4 walls. They live in an ocean and they swim up and down and vertically and horizontally, and why would they want to constrain themselves with walls and seats and furniture like that? And then their nomenclatures for everything is probably what drove me the most nuts. They were the most painstakingly obvious names that you can think of. And I wanted them to be something unique to the mer culture, like something named after someone who existed in a time we don't necessarily understand because it's part of the mer culture, or a place name that probably doesn't make sense to us. I don't know. I feel like it was too simplified, it was too dumbed down, and would make perfect sense for something like Disney. If you catered towards that audience of 9 to 13-year-olds, it would be perfect. But given some of the content in this book, some of the scenes that happened in this book, I feel like it's more centered towards the YA side of things. The language just feels too young to be appropriate for that audience. I don't know. If you have read this book, let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. And with that, I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.